ancient Rome's Temple of Vesta, 6 virgins guarded a sacred flame. During their 30-year service to the goddess, the Vestal virgins were constrained by strict vows of chastity. In exchange, they enjoyed enormous prestige and legal privilege, which was denied to other Roman women. Their guardianship of Vesta's sacred flame was believed to ensure the continued existence of the Roman state and its people. The Roman grammarian Festus informs us that both brides and the Vestal virgins wore an ancient hairstyle called the senicrinus, which the Romans associated with chastity. Today, the style is called either the senicrinus or the sexcrinus, due to the belief that it relied on 6 braids of hair for its arrangement. Using primary source material and period-appropriate tools and techniques, this presentation is the first to demonstrate how a Vestal virgin hairstyle was likely constructed. Recreating the Vestal senicrinus hairstyle has historically proved challenging because the costume worn by Vestal virgins was extremely modest. No Vestal virgin portrait reveals its hairstyle in full detail. All Vestal depictions include various ceremonial head coverings that obscure the underlying hairdress. Vestal virgins wore as many as 3 layers of ceremonial head covering: suffibulum, infula, and vita. The outermost layer, the suffibulum, was a rectangular cloth edged in purple. It was secured at the breast by a special brooch called a fibula. In sculptural depictions, the fibula appears to have been set with stones. The middle layer, the infula, might be described as a turban-like head wrap, possibly contrived from long rovings of unspun wool tied in complex patterns including hanging loops or streamers. The word vita has multiple technical meanings. In sources, it is primarily used to indicate ribbons or cords used to tie hair together when arranging it. The streamers hanging from a vestal's infula were also called vitae. Only the Uffizi Vestal portrait retains enough of its hairstyle to permit reverse engineering. In monochrome, this complex hairstyle is difficult to decipher, but with color coding, one may more easily follow its internal logic. The yellow-coated front hair is wrapped around a red-coated band or cord. In profile, the front and back hair are coated with green and pale blue, demarcated by a faint ear-to-ear parting. From the back, one may best appreciate the style's complexity. At least 7 braids are visible. 6 of these braids work in pairs, here coated in green, pink, and blue, and a 7th braid is constructed from the ends of the yellow-coated front hair. Recreating the senicrinus on a live model requires only the simplest of period-appropriate tools: a comb, several hair bodkins, woolen cord, which will hereafter be called a structural vita, a T-pin, and water as a styling aid. Pre-sectioning the top hair facilitates later steps. 6 hair bodkins are necessary to pre-section. The first pair of braids is woven in the green-coated central panels on each side of the head. Starting from the top of each panel, weave a 3-strand augmenting outside braid, also known as a cornrow-type braid. When you reach the ear and all the hair has been consumed, Continue braiding the lengths all the way to the tips of the hair. Feel free to dampen the hair for pliability and control. Repeat this operation on the opposite side of the head. Now move to the back of the head and weave the pink braid pair. As illustrated, divide the hair over the occipital into 2 rhomboid panels. Weave 3-strand free-hanging braids at the locations indicated by the white dots. Braid all the way to the tips of the hair. The blue braids will conceal the vertical part line at the center back. This is done by joining diagonal top and bottom panels, then braiding them at the nape. To match the statue example, first join the upper left crown panel to the lower right nape panel. Weave a 3-strand free-hanging braid all the way to the tips of the hair. Repeat this action on the opposite side by joining the upper right crown panel to the lower left nape panel. Weave a 3-strand free-hanging braid all the way to the tips of the hair. This completes the 3 braid pairs. To install the structural vita, release the yellow-coated panels at the face. The model assists by holding the vita still while small strands of hair are sequentially wrapped around it. Notice that the model's front hair is not of uniform length. The center forehead hair is considerably shorter, but we will see that this shorter hair has no adverse effect on the finished style. This detail may explain an apparent contradiction between the sculptural evidence and an anecdote recounted by Pliny the Elder. In Historia Naturalis, he talks of a particular tree that was called the hair tree because the Vestal Virgin's offerings of hair was brought to it. If Vestals sacrificed only the front fringe of their hair, this would have had very little impact on their ability to dress the hair in the semicrinus or its appearance once dressed. However, there are circumstances under which a Vestal's own biological hair could be problematic. According to Aulus Gellius, Vestal candidates had to be physically perfect. If hair counted in this physical evaluation, unexpected problems could arise. Only prepubescent girls were considered for the Vestal priesthood, yet many health conditions affecting hair growth, such as androgenetic alopecia or thyroid problems, might not present themselves until after puberty, possibly 3 to 10 years after a Vestal was chosen. Thinning or insufficiently long-growing hair may have demanded some flexibility in dressing the semicrinus. Some have claimed that this Vestal Virgin depicted on the Cancelleria Relief B proves that Vestal Virgins cut their hair into a short, bow-like shape. But I suggest that perhaps she suffered from a natural insufficiency in her own hair, and in compensation, she wrapped her hair from forehead to nape around a structural vita. Once the first side is wrapped, the model moves her hand nearer the ear in order to prevent the finished side from unwinding, while the other side of the vita is wrapped in hair. When both sides are wrapped, Tie the ends of the structural vita in a square knot at the nape, making sure that it passes underneath all the braids. The presence of a seventh braid on the Uffizi Vestal portrait challenges the standard hypothesis that the semicrinus was constructed from exactly 6 braids. As previously mentioned, the lengths of hair left over after wrapping the structural vita are the source of this braid. Take the loose ends from the left-hand side of the structural vita and weave a 3-strand free-hanging braid to mid-strand. Pass this braid across the nape underneath the other braids. Join its ends to the loose ends on the right-hand side. Make sure that the right-hand strand passes underneath the other braids as well. Redivide these combined ends into 3 strands and weave a free hanging braid to the tips of the hair. Now lift the 7th braid up to the top of the head. Have the model hold it out of the way. Now tie each respective braid pair, green, pink, and blue, into a half square knot. On the Uffizi Vestal portrait, half square knots are implied by the diagonal line separating each braid pair. A different Vestal portrait, housed in the Antiquario Forense, supports this choice by more clearly showing the typical undulation, distortion, and staggering of the half square knot. With 3 braids in each hand, pull them taut and draw them toward the top of the head between the yellow and green coated panels. Tie the ends into a single square knot or a chain of square knots, depending on hair length. Fix the knotted hair in place using a hair bodkin. Now return attention to the 7th braid. Coil it around the fingers, then tuck the coil into the back braids. The semicrinus is now complete, so onto the headdress. The structural details of vestal infulae vary significantly among surviving portraits. It may be that different types of infulae were required for specific festivals or were used to indicate rank among the vestals themselves. Because the infula created for this demonstration is of a composite design, I will not elaborate on its technical construction. It is meant only to invoke the spirit of ancient infulae. Center the edge of the suffibulum over the forehead. With the T-pin, secure it to the infula. This prevents the suffibulum from being blown off the head in windy weather. Fold the edge back, then secure the corners of the suffibulum to the tunica with the fibula. Recreating the Uffizi vestal hairstyle begs as many questions as it solves. The commonly held belief that vestal hairstyles were constructed from exactly 6 braids is contradicted by artifact evidence. The minimum number of braids necessary to recreate the Uffizi vestal's hairstyle is 7. damage, and varied forms of infulla headdress obscure the hair of other Vestal portraits, thus thwarting our ability to compare crucial technical features which might, if they were visible, help us understand Vestal hairstyles in a more general way. However, if there is any hairstyle feature shared by all Vestal portraits, it is not a particular infulla design or even 6 braids, but rather the way the hair is twisted back from the face along the hairline around a structural vita. Backward twisting hair at the face is the single most consistent feature of the Vestal Virgin's seni crinis, and, given the general modesty of Vestal attire, the Vestal method of wearing the structural vitae was, to the Roman public, the single most visible aspect of their hairstyle. While structural vitae are not often depicted in Roman matronal hairstyles, it is striking how many metaphorical vitae reverberate through Roman fashion history. Hair twisting back from the face is a key structural element for many imperial hairstyles. Is it possible that these styles were, if not direct quotes, deliberate paraphrases of the Vestal Virgin's seni crinis?